Hey guys, welcome back to our series on building an app like Snapchat. Today we're going to focus on actually animating this neat little custom tab layout that we created for ourselves in the last video. So we just got finished with making the full UI, but we still need to actually make these things move. If we look at our sample app, as we scroll through, we can see that a couple different things happen. First off, this view and this view both move down, and this top view scales down a little bit. So we have a slight scaling down, and the alpha of this view goes out. So that's one animation that happens. Another animation that happens is that indicator grows and shrinks and moves position. So as we scroll, it moves position. The final thing is these views on the side move in, and they also change color, as long with really all the views change color. So we have a lot of work to do. Let's get right to it. Okay, so right now all of our views are white, and so we can actually go in. There's one change that we want to make. First off is make this indicator gray. I actually did that the last time I ran it, but dark gray, because the indicator is only going to be visible when the views are supposed to be gray. It won't be visible when the views are supposed to be white. So if you go into your indicator background drawable, and you just change the background color to dark gray. And like I said, I made these color resources a while ago. If you guys want to copy them, you can go ahead and pause the video right now and just copy down each of these color values. We'll just make things a little bit easier for you as we continue. Okay, so in order to do this, let's just break it down. The first thing I want to do is change the color, because you'll notice as we scroll, without the change color, you can't even see the views. So that's an important thing to change. You may notice that as we scroll, the color changed gradually from white to gray. So this is going to use a class that you don't use every day, but it's really cool when you do get to use it. And the class is called the ARGB Evaluator. So if we do, we're going to create an instance of it. We're going to save it in a field as well. So we're going to call it private ARGB Evaluator, ARGB Evaluator. This ARGB Evaluator, what it does is it has one method on it. It's called evaluate. And what it takes in is a fraction and then two values, so a start value and an end value. So this evaluate method is part of a type evaluator. This ARGB evaluator knows how to do this type evaluation for colors, but you could have a type evaluator that can evaluate the difference between lots of different things. This one just happens to know how to do it for colors. And so what we're going to do is, when our page scrolls, we're going to have it call this method, private void set color. This color is going to take in a fraction. That fraction is going to be equal to the distance fraction from center. Because once we know the fraction from the center, we know how much to pass to our evaluator. And we also need to save an instance of our colors in fields. So we'll do private int center color, private int side color. Okay, so our evaluator is going to evaluate the difference between our colors. So we can do it two ways. We could either have it be 1 minus the fraction from center and start at our gray and go to white, or we can do the opposite. We're going to do the opposite because it's a little more straightforward. So the fraction from center is going to go in here, and then we're going to do our center color here and our side color here. This is going to give us an object. This evaluate method returns an object. But what we are going to do is, since we know it's going to be a color resource int, we can just cast it to this. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is actually set this color. And this is the reason why we made all of these image views instead of just regular views. You can do it with regular views too, but it's more reliable with an image view, and it works on older devices as well with an image view, so that's just good to know. You're going to call this method called setColorFilter and then the color. And we'll do that with the start image, color, as well as with the end image. These three views, as we scroll, we should actually change the colors. So we need to figure out what the fraction from center is going to be. Like before, it's going to be based on which page we started out on. So if page equals 0, if position equals 0, the distance from center is equal to 1 minus the offset, because as we scroll closer to the center, the offset's going to get larger. So set color 1 minus position offset. Okay, and we're going to have an else if position equals 1. This is a lot like the way we set the color of the alpha of the background when we did our fading to blue and our fading to purple. So it should seem fairly familiar. Okay, so now if we go ahead and run this, actually nothing is going to happen because we never set this. So what we did is we implemented ViewPager on page change listener, but we never actually set the ViewPager. So we're gonna actually add one more method, public void set up with ViewPager. It's gonna take in a ViewPager, and it's gonna say ViewPager set on page, no, sorry, add on page change listener this. And then what we need to do is we need to go to our main activity, and in our main activity we need to check if we reference, and we do not yet reference, so we're going to have to we did add our snap tabs to the main activity, but we never actually referenced it from the main activity. So we're going to have to go into our main activity, snap tabs views equals find view by ID, r.id.snap tabs, cast, and then snap tabs set up with ViewPager, and the ViewPager will be the current one. Okay, so now if we go back into our tabs view and we run this, we should see our color change as we go. Actually, it's not going to work again. I just realized we never actually referenced what our start color and our end color are going to be. So we're going to have to do that. So the center color is going to be context compat, get color, get context, r.color dot white. Side color is going to be context compat, color, get context, r.color dot dark gray. Okay, finally, that's a whole bunch of running without anything happening. But we are going to jump in, and we should, as we page through, see things change color if we did everything correctly. It's launching the activity. Okay, so it's a dark gray here, and as we page to the middle, it's light gray and dark gray again. And you can see this center one didn't actually change color, and the reason is we're just going to fade that one out. One interesting thing to note is that this view is changing where the full fill is white. That's sort of weird. I think there's a quick way we can work around this. If we go into our large circle, and instead of just having a stroke, we also add a solid, Android color, and we do Android color transparent. When we look at our preview, it's going to look the same, but for some reason you have to do this to, I believe, keep it from filling in the image when the color filter is added. It's sort of weird because it doesn't happen all the time, but I've run into it, and I think this is how you fix it. Yeah, okay, so as we page, yep, looking better. Alright, so the next thing that we can do is let's add that movement of these side views in, and that's going to take a little bit of calculations. Basically, we want to say we're going to set some distance from the center that these views are going to end up, and then just move them as it scrolls some percentage of the distance between the 2 points. So in order to do that, we need to first define a minimum distance we want between the views. I'm just going to go with 80 dp. And so if we do int center padding equals, we want it to be in dp value because we want it to be the same on every screen. So the way you get a dp value dynamically is you do type value apply dimension type value complex unit dp, the value that you want, 80, and then you have to pass in the display metrics, get resources, get display metrics, because it needs to know the screen density of the screen you're on in order to figure out what 80 dp is supposed to be for your screen. So this is the minimum center padding that we want to have. So what we want to do is we want to say that the distance that the view should travel should be whatever their current position is. So if we use the start image, get x minus let's do the bottom image, get x. So that we're saying the distance between this view and this view minus the center padding, I believe, is what we want to do. How do we want to do this? Yeah, minus center padding. So we're saying we want some distance which equals the distance between these views. And we're actually going to save it in a variable that we can access later. So we're going to say it private int what should we call this one? Let's call it nviews translation. In the x direction. So nviews translation x equals this. Okay, so this would work if in init these views had already been drawn in their correct places, but before these views are drawn, they're actually gonna get x is just gonna return 0 because it hasn't been initialized yet. So what we have to actually do is we have to move this into a view tree observer. So if we do get view tree observer, add on global layout listener, new on global layout listener. This says wait until bottom image has been drawn, and once that one's drawn, the other one will be drawn as well. Once this is drawn, then do our calculation. We can make our center padding final, that's fine. That just means it's not going to change, and we know this value isn't going to change. We're never going to like null it out or something like that, so that's fine. We say once the bottom image view has been drawn, it's been laid out, go ahead and set these values because then get x will return the correct position. And then we also have to do remove get view tree observer remove on global layout listener this. Now when we're in this on global layout listener, this refers to the global layout listener. If we're over here, this is the class that we're in, and so it's going to have things like bottom image, which are parts of this class. But if we do this in here, it only has one method, which is on global layout, because it is an anonymous class, a view tree on global layout listener class. And so this will remove this listener once we've calculated our correct value. Okay, so we calculated this maximum change in distance. So now what we're going to want to have is a method called private void move views float fraction from center. It's going to take in the same value as our other one, but what we want to do in this value is say once these things have, once we know the fraction from center, we can do start view, start image, set translation x, fraction from center multiplied by the translation x, and image, set translation x, fraction times m. Now if we just did this, both of our views would move like this, or like this. So we actually have to make the end one negative. That way it will move in and the other one will move out. So we can do move views, 1 minus position offset, and move views, position offset. Okay, so now if we run this again, hopefully we will see that as we scroll, our views move in. Oh. And it looks like we have it exactly wrong. If we check out what's going on here, it looks like as we scroll, both our views are moving out instead of in. And so we actually, that just means we got our signs wrong. We could either swap the signs up here in our move view method. Ooh. Ooh, we're getting a serious change. So that actually means it's not just our signs that are wrong, is our full calculation is wrong. So if we go back here, oops, copy paste that. I think actually that our signs are correct here, but we made a mistake in our here. So let's see. We are subtracting the start padding. The distance between the views is the start image get x minus the bottom image. Oh, you know what? The bottom image I got x is actually going to be bigger than the start image because it's farther along in the view. So we just need to switch these and start, because otherwise our distance will be too far. It's going to be, the sign of the distance will be wrong. First off, it's going to be wrong, and you'll see why. Because we're basically saying like some small number minus some number and then minus some more. And so you're adding an additional negative. And so all the signs would be opposite of what you wanted, as we saw. And as well, the distance will not be what we want. Okay, so as we scroll, Look at that, our views come right in just like we wanted. You saw that sort of jankiness right at the beginning. We will fix that in a minute. But okay, so now that we have these views moving correctly, let's also add the movement of our indicator. So our indicator is going to have a translation X that is just actually equal to the padding that we set right here, because it's always going to be that distance. So we're going to do private int m indicator. So instead of this being center padding, we could just say the indicator translation X and do a subtraction here. And the reason is the indicator is always going to move as far as it is that we brought in these, as far as the distance between this center view and these side views after they have been brought in, because that's the full distance that it's gonna move. So that's good to go. We'll run that in just a minute. The other thing that we want to do is, as we scroll, we want to shrink and change the alpha of that center view. And so in order to do that, we can add this to our move views method, because it has the same values basically. So the fraction from center multiplied by the well, let's think about this. As the indicator moves, we want the indicator to go, it's actually not going to be this simple, because as we scroll, we want the indicator to always move in the direction that we are scrolling from. So as we scroll towards this page, we want the indicator to move towards that page. And as we scroll towards this page, we want it to move to the center. And as we scroll here, and so it's not going to be the same as this move views method. Instead, what it's going to be is up here, we are going to have the indicator set translation X to be 1 minus position offset. We're actually going to have this all be negative. So actually what we could do is just do position offset minus 1. And here we're going to have it be indicator set translation X be position offset. And we're going to multiply that times the indicator translation X and do the same thing here. Forgot about that. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. We have an error, let's check it out. Oh yeah, we never finished cleaning up this view. Okay, so let's give this a go. Okay, so it looks like once everything gets set up correctly, our indicator is moving to the correct positions. Except for right at the beginning, it's on the right spot, but we can fix that. We also want the alpha to change at basically the same rate as we want it to move. So let's think about how we want that to work. We would like our indicator alpha to be oh, sorry, not the indicator alpha, the indicator width or scale. Oh, and the indicator scale and alpha will all both be just related to the fraction from the center. So if we go into our move views, it can go here. If we just do indicator dot set alpha equals fraction from center, and indicator set scale x fraction from center. So if we run this, you'll see so as we scroll, look at that. We have our indicator growing and shrinking as the scrolling happens. So we are so very close to having our views be completely done. The only other thing that we need to do is move and scale the center views. So let's create a final method. With a float center scale and a float center translation. Nah, this should just be an int. Center translation y, because we're going to move in the y direction. So let's think about what the center scale should be. We want to think about what we want the minimum size to be of this center view. Probably about 70% of the view. And so we could say that the center scale should be move and scale views. The center scale should be about, it's going to be relative to the distance from the center. And so if we actually just pass in the fraction from center here, once we know the fraction from center, which is going to be the same up here, 1 minus position offset. We'll do this part in a second. Same thing here. Just position offset. Okay, so once we know the distance from the center, we can set the scale. The scale will be scale x and scale y, float scale is going to be 0.7 because that's the minimum we want, plus fraction from center multiplied by 0.3, because 0.3 is the difference between 0.7 and 1. So if we can apply this. So we're saying at minimum it should be 75%, but as it gets closer and closer to the center, it can grow larger and larger, up to 30% larger. And then center image set translation y, as well as bottom image set translation y, because these are both going to be the same and we'll have to figure out how far down we want them to go. A good distance that we could have them go is going to be probably about, let's think about this. It's going to be about here, which is really pretty much the bottom of this view. So if we just said the distance between this view and the very bottom, we should be able to get it that way. So if we just say at the beginning, in our view tree observer, we're going to have to add this as well. So private int center translation y. This also has to be done after the views have been measured. Center translation y should be get height, so the full height of the view that we're in, so from here all the way down to about here, because we added that padding, minus the distance between the bottom view and the very top. So if we say get height minus bottom image get bottom. Okay, so now we say that's the full center, and we actually don't need this anymore either. We can just say multiply the fraction from center that we have multiplied by the center translation y. Okay, so if we build this, we're getting pretty close here. Okay, so as you can see, our image grows as we scroll down, and the bottom view drops. We may just want to add a slight fade on that bottom view. But other than that, everything looks pretty good. Oh no, one thing that is wrong is our scale is actually going the opposite of what we need it to do. So let's go into our here, and what we want to say is this will fix it, but so you can see what's happening is the scale is actually getting really bigger as we scroll down, and that's not the intent. Okay, so so that's better. This is what we were expecting. So as we scroll, the view goes up. One other thing is we need to change the alpha of this view. We want it to be completely faded out as it's translated down. So let's do center bottom image, set alpha, and the alpha is really going to just be the fraction from center, because when it's in the center it's going to be 100%, but when it's not in the center we want it to be faded out. You won't really notice it as much because it's white, and so it sort of fades into the other background, but we want it to be totally gone. So okay, so there we go, fades right back in. Opposite again. Bah. So we have one minus here. sometimes this is how it goes. You just experiment with the values until they do what you want. But there's a whole lot going on in this animation, so as we move, it will make things a little bit easier for us. But everything is looking really good now. So one other thing that we might want to add is when we click on these views, it jumps to those specific pages. So if we go into our setup view pager, we can also add some methods where we say start image, set OnClick Listener, new OnClick Listener. So if view pager get current item equal not equal, so basically if the current item is not 0 and you click on the far item, we want the view pager set current item 0. And the same thing if we do the end image. OnClick Listener, new OnClick Listener, view pager, the current item is not equal to 1. View pager, set current item to 1. We can do the same thing with the center, but we're actually going to have a more complicated OnClick Listener for the center, where if you're in the center, it actually takes a picture. So we don't want to set an OnClick Listener here because you can only have one OnClick Listener on a view at a time. Okay, so when you click on this page, oh, I have this set to 1, but it's incorrect, right? Yeah, this is supposed to be 2. But it's looking really, really good. We're a lot closer to the actual app implementation. One other thing we can do is in the main activity, after we set it up with the view pager, if we just call adapter set, view pager set current item 1, we're going to scroll to the middle right at the beginning, which will also fix some of our tabs state issues. If we weren't going to scroll it right at the beginning, we'd have to set it up correctly at the beginning, but since we're always going to be scrolling past it right at the beginning, these views will move into place correctly. So if we go ahead and run this, because as you know, the Snapchat app opens up to the camera, and so we want our app to do the same. So look at that. Perfect and perfect. And if we click here, click here. Alright guys, so this video got really long, but hopefully you were able to see that it takes some experimenting, but you can always make your own custom items that will allow you to have some really nice custom navigation in your own apps. You can sort of take this idea and tweak it. Just add a view page on change view pager on page change listener, and have your animations based on the distance that you scroll, and you can do some really cool and creative stuff. So don't forget to like this video and subscribe. In the next video, we're going to go over loading data into lists to look a little bit more like the Snapchat app. So as you can see, we have all these different types of items in our different lists. So it's going to be a really great video because loading lists of data is a real important thing in any mobile app. So thank you guys so much for watching. So don't forget to like and subscribe.